No interracial relationship is acceptable because we have too many black women who are unmarried. Black women are the largest population on the planet Earth. If you can't find one in America, get it from Africa. If you can't get it from Africa, go to the Caribbean, go to Canada, go to Europe. Why would a black man need to copulate, build a family with anything other than a black woman where you have so many black women available? It is an exercise in self-hatred. There's no way to get around it.
To the Renaissance Room podcast, and today is January 13th, and your girl is tired. Yes, tired, like very much tired. I think it's a spiritual battle. It's endless, it's ongoing. Your girl's been enduring quite a bit. I look forward to sharing my testimony. I'm not gonna grow weary, God willing. So I hope you guys are doing great. I hope y'all are, staying strong in the faith and, just out there staying strong, staying safe. Today's episode, I wanted to talk about cultural appropriation, and I just kind of wanted to talk about some recent experiences I've experienced in my own life, and from a documentary kind of like perspective, just what I've witnessed that's been going on in our world. Racial tensions right now is at an all-time high. I think with the exposure of TikTok, it kind of created somewhat of a segue into the Black community's vernacular and attitudes and cultural norms. And I think what that has created, it's always kind of been there in some individuals who possess that type of like envious spirit, right, that are white. I think that it's further put them in a rage. And one of the things that I discovered just intuitively, just being in a situation in my life where I was experiencing racism, was that, if a person like insecure people, they're very territorial. Like what's theirs is theirs. They hold tight of it. And if they sense a threat in the environment, right? Like, let me just break it down in how I wrote it. So I discovered that women are territorial. And if they are insecure, then if they sense a threat, meaning they feel like you can come and take something from them, they feel like you're doing something better than them, they feel like you may have better resources, whatever the case may be, their intent is kind of like to charge at you and to come at you and pretty much destroy you and have you removed, right? It's kind of like that animalistic, like foreshadowing a little bit, like you're hunting for prey, you see it, you want to spot it, you want to get it out because it's a threat and you feel like you're in imminent danger. And I think that was like the main thing that I noticed in this recent situation with a trainer of mine. I realized that she was just insecure, and that for some odd reason, me just being me, me being the person that I am, it was a threat to her. I had to check my ego a few times because, one of the things that I've really been working to overcome, especially in my walk with Christ, is certain prejudices that have been passed on to me. But let me not go too far there because you can only speak from your experience. One of the things that I know about white people and their racism, I'm reading this book right now. It's actually pretty good. One of the things I know about white people and their racism is that they kind of have this thing to where it's like I'm sorry, you guys, my grandmother is like, she's talking and it kind of distracted me. But one of the things I noticed about white people and their racism, a lot of the stereotypes and things that they possess are things that they actually have not experienced. So it's just further perpetuating the system that places them at the top of the hierarchy, right? And when I was reading this book, she kind of did a very interesting way. She kind of like did it in a way where she tried to understand like white people and like try to get us to understand like their mindset in regards to racism. And so she kind of gave examples where, the white guy in the story was talking about how he, how he feels like Black people are at the top and we get certain, special treatments like programs and things like that, and how they don't get that. I think what we have to realize in regards to this whole topic is that Black people do not have the power to completely victimize anyone, because we're not strengthened in numbers, right? White people have certain hierarchies and positions, and systemically they're often chosen for leadership positions. They have more tangible resources sometimes, so in these situations it's not really like a matter of, there's really no debate here. I think a lot of times white people just kind of want to be freed from historical precepts and the things that they've done. And I think they want to be kind of freed from the guilt and shame that may come along with that. And also being alive today and still seeing their, people raging out on Black people. So I think a lot of times it's more so like in a form of escapism, like they just kind of want to get away from that truth. So anyway, he touched on the topic of interracial dating in this. And, for me, at this point in my life, I don't really care. I think you date who you want to date and everyone's got their own choice. But one thing I will say, and with the rise of TikTok, I've noticed that white girls today are more competitive than ever with Black women. I've noticed today that white girls have completely taken on so much of the Black woman's demeanor, her vernacular, like everything, like our speech, the things we say, the way we move. There was this young girl in my training class at this previous job, and she said that she was part Indian. That's another thing I'm noticing with a lot of white people. They're taking these ancestry tests and they're trying to find ways in which to date back and in some way relate to people of color. It doesn't really matter the descent. I haven't really heard a lot of white people say that they're Black, but I've heard a lot of them starting to identify with communities of color, whether it be Asian, Ethiopian, you know what I mean? They're trying to just kind of have a reason to appropriate. And she just kept saying something that I heard on TikTok, which is like a common little slang thing that Black girls do. And I think for me, what you guys have to understand, what is hurtful about cultural appropriation, everyone knows that you're trying to be Black. Like that, like I think that that's probably the one thing that we do kind of have to like sit and address. Like everyone knows you're trying to be Black. Nobody's mad at you for trying to be Black. We're mad. Let me not even say mad, because I don't even think mad is the word. I think it's more so like you're kind of, I don't know what emotions that would evoke in a victim when you can see and sit back and see everyone being you, but you're not being able to be you. You know what I mean? Like you're not able to come and say certain things and move a certain way because that's considered unprofessional. So anyway, I could tell that the trainer in this class did not have any background. I'm reading this book right now and it kind of talks about how it's called, I actually have it right here. Let me see. Look at me shaking the table. It's called Why Are All the Black Kids Sitting Together in the Cafeteria? And she talks about how I think it was a little over 75% of white people do not have any Black people in their network. So all they have is each other. And I discerned that some years ago when I was in like corporate spaces, because I could just tell like the microaggressions and the racism and the stereotypes that were kind of like, put on me and placed on me. It didn't align with my personality. And I think it's very sad because I think Blackness is only seen as cool or excellent or any of those things when it's in the capacity to be used and facilitated by white people. And that's a problem, right? Like that's the problem. So looking into interracial dating, I think the problem is that we have a lot of Black men who really aren't making these decisions for themselves, to be honest. You look at guys who are in the NFL and, these high-ranking positions. Now, first, we have to also, let me just say this. I think it's important to acknowledge that people have the right to date whoever they want to date. Like, I don't care. Like, to be honest, I don't care. You know what I mean? You do what you want to do with your life. But we do have to look at the systems that are at play and the images that kind of play into these interracial couplings, right? So when you look at, the league and things like that, there are influences, whether it be a coach, whether it be sponsors, whether it be, financial opportunities that are on the line that will cause players to actually date outside of their race, right? It's social acceptance. It's seen as this is what you're supposed to do. We also have to talk about a little bit here how the femininity movement in itself is rooted in white people. It's rooted in white women. It's rooted in the Marilyn Monroe, right? And what is that typically tailoring to? It's tailoring to the manipulation of men through the art of seduction, right? Through the art of, oh, let me be so sweet. Let me be so kind. Let me wow him. Like, it's kind of like the stripper, let me wow him with my body. Let me wow him with my mind. Let me wow him with my voice and my tone, right? We have to recognize that from a historical standpoint, white women have been catered to. Now, not all, right? I understand that there are people who have not grown up with the silver spoon in their mouth, but even still, we have to acknowledge that they have greater social and economical benefits because of the color of their skin. And I know a lot of people do not want to like sit in that space, because if you can sit in that space, then you have to deal with all of the emotions that comes with that comes with the fact that, hey, I may be mediocre, I may be, someone who's not really deserving of certain things, but because of the color of my skin, I get in anyway. You may have to sit with that, and that's not really for you to really beat yourself up for, if you are a white person, just because at the end of the day, I mean, you alone solemnly, like, you didn't create the system, you didn't create the world, you know what I mean? But that's not my battle. So moving forward, we have to look at the images and the peer pressure that is on our young Black boys when they do go to the league. I mean, not all, but there are some who did not graduate, right? There are some who, football has been their focus. And so, they may not have had like dating experience. They may not have had a certain like, there are just so many factors that kind of tie into the vulnerabilities, I think, of NFL players and NBA players that kind of tie them into like this interracial dating. Because when we really sit and think about just the cultural differences of Black and white people, it's a really big divide. And, I will say this, I think when it comes to Black women dating outside their race, a lot of times, I'm being honest, you guys, it really is just for love. Let me not, and I'm even cringing that I said that, but like, seriously, like, honestly, it really is just for love. Like, I see those relationships, and a lot of times I see a Black woman who just wanted to be loved. Now, before we veer, let me kind of touch on the topic of sugar daddies. This whole sugar daddy concept. I seen a young girl who was on TikTok, and she was dating these older men, and she talked about how they was flying her out and all these different things. I'm gonna tell y'all right now, don't stop that. And, it saddens me because we have our young girls looking up to these girls, thinking that this is the way. We have our young girls who are craving a father figure in their lives, craving some type of male figure in their lives, and they're being exploited. Okay, it's not at all what you think. And I don't think people realize, because we have the internet now, we give our youth entirely too much credit for being knowledgeable. They're not that, like, they are full of potential. They have resources that have not always been available to everyone because they have technology, but they are babies. They are young. They are innocent little kids. They don't know anything. So we have to understand that. And when I see young girls online with braces in their mouth talking about, guys this and guys that, I'm like, girl, sit down and read a book, because y'all are children. And I think that someone needs to come out and like let these kids know, like, it's okay to be a child. You're a child. Like, I was looking at when I see Cardi B, someone did a repost of her video talking about how she would fight over her husband or whatever. I think people have to realize that Cardi B is only 25. I think she may be a little bit older now, but like no more than 27. Like, so with that being said, we're the same age. And what we have to realize is that through cosmetics and the media and everything else she's probably been through in her life, she looks a little bit older. So I think that we kind of put this pressure then on her, on top of her having, social status. I think we kind of put this pressure on her to be like this role model and to be this one who has the rites of passage and the understanding. But like, understand that's not her calling. So stop listening to her. Stop listening to what she's saying. Stop listening to the city girls. Like, these are girls who, if they were doing that in your community, in your real lifetime, like, you would not be rocking with them. You would not be rocking with them, because they'd be like, girl, what? But because of proximity, right? And because, the illusion of like things and materialism and all these different things, it's like, oh, okay, Now, I'm not saying that, like, bash them. I'm not saying that like bashfully. I'm saying that in a way that just kind of brings awareness to let you guys know, like, stop looking to these people to be your role model when their lives are not in alignment with that. And just because a person got money don't mean you need to be following them and their wisdom. Yeah, she can teach you how to get some money, depending on what you're willing to do, but she's not going to be the mother figure that you need to give you, love and enlightenment and encouragement and wisdom for how to navigate your life as a young girl. The choices she's made, you don't know her story. You know what I mean? And I think that's like my biggest thing. And so I just try to tell young girls, especially, like, stop looking up to these girls because you don't know their story. You don't know what she went through that made her the way that she is. And, furthermore, it's like, people go through things in life and it changes them. You know what I mean? People go through things. I think sometimes we hear about the stories of the harshness and the things we had to go through, and with so much respect. And it's like, okay, I respect you. You went through this, you came out the jungle, you made it here and there. And though it's credible, right, you were able to triumph. It's a testimony and it's a beautiful thing. We have to recognize that at the end of the day, it's one of those things where it's like, you shouldn't have had to go through that. And is this person healed from that? Has God renewed their heart from those hard things, from the things that they had to see and do and in the world, to become the person that they are today? So understand that you have to kind of start seeing things from a spiritual lens, especially today, now more than ever, because you got so many people who are willing to jump on a podcast, jump on something and have an opinion about something. You know what I mean? So understand everyone's not called to that. So I just kind of had to touch on the whole toxic femininity movement. And furthermore, I need y'all to understand that this whole argument in regards to femininity, I know bell hooks was on the wave. I personally have my opinions about bell hooks, my personal stance on it all. But when I guess for me, it's more so because we have to understand that Bell Hooks was a lesbian. So a lot of the things that she is in, like, you know what I mean? Like her mindset, her ideology around a lot of things is centering into the feminist movement, which is then, removing men. I think that there's so much intersectionality and like disconnect between the feminist movement and the quote unquote gender wars. I think that in our community, though, like to bring it back, let me just tie it all around full circle. If Black people would stop fighting cultural battles that are not our own, and if we would wake up and tap into our communities and realize that these are not our problems, we don't fight over money because we never had it. Like, I know that so many people want to get and I'm not going to say we never had money, but a good majority of Black people are doing the best that they can. And even if they can provide for themselves, they are not millionaires. They are not six-figure owners. They have not had trust funds, and don't feel bad about this. That's the thing. And I think that's what TikTok and this whole fake sense of allegiance with white people has done for Black people. It's created self-hate. You have to understand, I need you to really understand this concept. Your granddaddy, your great granddaddy built their wealth. You have to understand the way the world is set up. It's not a matter of, oh, you're lazy. It's not a matter of, oh, you're dependent. It's not a matter of, it's a matter of when you go to work, if you're not willing to shut up, sit back, be compliant and fall in line. And for a lot of our Black men in these corporate spaces these days, today, the requirement is homosexuality. Yeah, if you're not willing to sit back, fall back, and do all those different things, you're not getting in the door. They're not going to give you a job. The things that I went through today at this job, at this company, were absolutely nothing more than racism, pure in its purest form. Y'all hear how I talk. Come on, please. I'm highly educated and I'm very much aware of how to conduct myself in front of white people, especially in a professional setting. Girl, I have experience. I've been working ever since I was every bit of 14. Girl, hello, jumped off the porch. First industry food service. I know how to conduct myself. You know what I mean? In a professional setting and manner. So this isn't a matter of, oh, you was, no. You can't pull that with me. You see what I mean? You can't pull it. I know who I am. You can't pull that with me. So my point is, you have to understand that there genuinely are systems in place that make it hard. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm not saying you can't start your own thing, be successful and provide. I'm not saying you can't have a corporate space where God allows you to walk into a door and the people respect you. I'm not saying any of those things. I'm just letting you know that is not everybody's portion. And so when you take these European norms and these cultural norms from European century and try to apply that to African-American history and African-American reality, that's problematic. And we're fighting in our community because that's not our truth. That's not our premise. That is not the origins in which we were given. You see what I'm saying? So gender wars would cease if Black people would stop taking on European norms. It all started with Kevin Samuels, right? Kevin Samuels, we don't even know his backstory, which is another danger of having people come online. People who are not willing to share what they've been through, where they come from. They have no testimony. Why are you listening to them? Kevin Samuels gets on this computer, right? God knows where this man is at this point. This man is probably in a hotel room renting out this thing, right? He got all this fake cologne on the counter, to try to convey a certain image. Talks about he's an image consultant. I did a little research on the guy. I didn't see any work in regards to image consulting. I'm pretty sure that he said he was fighting some type of illness. Could have been cancer. I don't know. right? And you have so many people who bow down to this man's words. I can honestly say what I discerned from Kevin Samuels was that he had a message. He did. He had a message. He had a passion to bring back the Black community. He had a passion to awaken the truth within our community of a lot of Black women, also taking on the European white woman's norms and culturalisms and placing those expectations on a Black man who has not been given the same opportunities. Yeah, I said that. I'm here for holding women accountable. I'm not opposed to that. Be aware that this sets our communities up to suffer. Like, it sets us up to suffer. It sets us up to constantly be warring with one another, because instead of looking at the system, instead of, looking at the opposition in our way, and instead of coming to Christ, which is our entire origin. So I'm about to touch on that in a minute, but we go to each other. Right? We want to blame it's a Black man. Oh, it's a Black woman. No, baby. We were fine. And this is my thing. So today I was listening to a podcast, which I love African American history so much. I love learning about who I am. I love educating my people. I love creating a community for us to sit and be and to really feel one another. That's one thing I will say you will probably miss out on in interracial dating sometimes. It will not be rooted in that understanding of who you are. I think a lot of people sometimes, I think that when it comes to interracial dating, before we get back on topic, I think it's just more so one of those things to where I think you just get tired of trying to, what's so crazy? Because I just had this revelation as I'm even speaking. The disconnect with us in our community is that we do not be equally yoked. The disconnect with us is that we don't follow God's will. We don't follow his commandments. So we don't get the love that God ordained for us. We don't get to reap the fruit of the harvest of those who walk together. And God talks about being in fellowship, right? He talks about how two is better than one because they have a greater return on their labor. See, we don't get the harvest because we don't follow the commandments, right? So we get in the bed. We have the kids. We do all these different things with people who God never ordained for our lives. People who God ordained for a season in our lives. I've had situations where I felt like I probably should have testified to somebody, but instead I slipped up. I'm in sin. You see what I'm saying? I think that this is why we have so much disconnect in our community. And so that's the real origin of it. But I think because you don't know Christ, sometimes it's easy to kind of step into the systems, you know what I mean? But we don't really realize God has overcome the world, right? So God is our source. So I think that that's really where the disconnect is in our community, 100%. But okay, let me get back on track, because I was making a reference about just the Kevin Samuels. So I really do think that Kevin had a message to share, but I'm going to be honest, and I don't know why I say that, because I'm always honest. Why do I don't know, it bothers me. Okay, so yes, Kevin had a message. I really do think that he had a message to convey. I just don't think it was his time. I think whenever we're processing hurt, and that's why for me, I really struggle with flesh. I think we all do. But I had to really pray over coming onto this podcast and wanting to educate about African American history, wanting to share, our origins and just talk about the things that could really liberate our minds. I had to heal from certain prejudices because I knew for myself I didn't want to come on and be spewing hate, and I think that sometimes takes patience. Sometimes that does take powering down the podcast. Sometimes that does take prayer time, taking a step back and, going into prayer and asking God, hey, is this okay? Should I be doing this? Does this feel right? Is there a sense of peace? Do I have the Holy Spirit flowing through me when I do it? You know what I mean? And that takes time. And I think sometimes we can get in the way of ourselves. And I think, unfortunately, I think that Kevin hurt more people than he did heal them. And I think that his intention might have been to liberate us and to free us from some things. But I think that there was a lot of hurt there in that, And like I said, even the whole suit and tie, the whole thing was just giving European, quote unquote patriarchy, whatever, So anyway, cultural appropriation is real and it's hurtful because, Black women are not respected in the same regard, and white women are often praised and compensated for all that we are. I seen a NFL player's wife. She was a white woman. She was online talking about, she's making like funny little quote unquote reels or whatever. And let me not say quote unquote reels, because the quote unquote went under the funny, right? She was making quote unquote funny reels, and she was like, there was reels where she was just talking about how, when he laughs about something and you when you're threatening him with divorce papers and blah blah blah. I can honestly say in my own life what I've witnessed, because I'm only going to speak from my experience, and that's why it's so important for y'all to hear me when I say the things that I say. I can never be racist. I have love in my heart. I really do. I have love for everybody. Like, I know I talk about the LGBT community, but I got love for them. I really do, because first of all, I understand it's a choice for some people. Some people, and I think for me, it's just more so like, it's just not my place, like I'm never, and I was praying over that, struggling with that. And I just need people to know that, like, for me, I don't care, like, I'm at this point in my life where it's like, you live your life. You know what I mean? I love regardless of whatever, you know what I mean? Like, if that's, you know what I mean, what God has for me, and that's where the Spirit's flowing, then hey, I'm able to love everybody. Like, God is in me. I love people, I have that. So just to clarify, but, she basically was making videos just talking about, that's what I was saying. Sorry. So the thing what it is, what I've always experienced, every time I've seen a white woman get with a black man, I promise you the occasions that I've seen, she misuses him. She abuses him. She mistreats him. She doesn't really like him like that. She's like really, really like not good to him. I'm not talking about mixed kids. I'm talking like straight up black man, creme de la creme. Okay. And the reason why I say not mixed kids is because I think when you're mixed, you have somewhat of like kind of like a benefit of best of both worlds. You get to see the good and the bad, and you know what I mean? So you it's different, but I've seen it with my own eyes. I'll never forget. I was checking a woman in one time. She had a brother with her. I mean, every time I see it, literally the black man is being exploited by this white woman. Like she is literally exploiting him. She's embarrassing him. You know what I mean? Like every time I see it. And so I think that we do have to kind of look at the origins of why black men do decide to date outside their race. And I do think that a big part of it, from what I've discerned, is for the desire of financial gain. Social status, social and economical status. It is absolutely rooted in self-hate. And so that kind of goes back to Christ. You got to know who you are, because one thing I know about it, this world is forever changing. Right now, today, it's the pronouns. It's all these different things that I still don't understand. It's all of this today. You know what I mean? Like, and it wasn't at one point. And so I say that to say, to concur that when it comes to just the world in itself and the world defining you have to know that the world is always changing. So with the world always changing, you have to be rooted in something. You have to have like an infinite level of like self, and like that can only come from God, and God is the constant. God is the truth. His way is truth. So it's not going to be, today we're this way and tomorrow we're that way, which leads me to my last topic about cultural appropriation. So the origins of spirituality, Christianity, the whole night, they originate in Africa. They do not originate from European culture. Europeans have not had any relationship with God. They were not spiritual. They were not God-fearing people. They were not praised. All of that was not rooted in their culture. And it's interesting today to see. To me, I remember when I first seen the mega churches, and I was so upset because I know churches who have been, in spaces in which they've been consistent. They've been progressing. They have, members, and they have never received not one lick of funding to build a mega church, which probably could bring more people of color, right? And people who would love to praise God in that way. And you have these churches today where it's all about money. It's all about money. It's not about God. And I think it's unfortunate that, you have people who think it's a matter of like, oh, everything is about, Christians think it's not about having money. It's not about that. That's not even what the conversation is about. But you can't sit here and possibly think that every church in the hood never applied for funding. You know what I mean? You can't possibly think that every church in the hood never had their ducks in a row. Like, you can't, like, you got to see that it's systemic racism. So to me, that says a lot. And the one thing that these white mega churches will not talk about is racism. I never hear them talk about racism. They never talk about racism. All these preachers today are preaching for this false sense of collectiveness and allegiance. And, you know, I think about that in terms of today, the things that I experienced. I actually had, you know, trainers and people tried to escort me out of a building. I couldn't believe it. I said, whoa. And honestly, at the time, it was a little traumatic, and I was in tears because, you know, for me in my life, you know, you see the things, you hear about it, you see it online, but you don't think it can happen to you, you know? And so, in that moment, just seeing so many bystanders, you know, so many people knowing that this is wrong, and seeing how the people that were in position at the time to make this decision all came together collectively from different departments to escort me out when I was trying to just get an understanding. It was, and they couldn't give me an understanding. You know, I'm speaking just as calmly and plainly as such. And, you know, the guy went on to say he felt like I was abusing him. And I was confused for a moment because I'm like, the word abuse that's a very strong word. I'm like, you feel hurt? Do you feel like you like when you meet, you talk about abuse, like, whoa, that's a pretty, you know. And he said, you need to leave. And one of the things that I've always noticed about white people is that they want to be down until it's time to be down and to be discomfort, right? To experience discomfort. And that's my problem with cultural appropriation. That's my whole take on cultural appropriation. It's not okay because they're not willing to have the conversations and actually sit in a space of discomfort, you know. And when you walk into such spaces, it's overruling, you know, it's overruling with their comfort. And anyone who seeks to disrupt that comfort, that's where the problem lies. So when I see that, you know, interracial dating and things like that, my question is, are you able to be yourself? Do you feel safe in those spaces around those people? You know what I mean? Because it's alarming. It's very much alarming. And I can't tell you how many times I've seen white women just be super competitive. I mean, it's not even just white women. It's any woman that's not black, to be honest, because I'm talking about black women. But I've seen them, you know, in the lengths that they'll go to try to, especially to destroy a black woman, her confidence, her self-esteem, taking back promotions, making her dumb down, you know. And I think about the psychological trauma, and I just want to know, black women, are y'all okay? Black men, are y'all okay? You know, working these jobs where you got these bosses who have no authority, right? And probably because God didn't give them authority, to be honest. Maybe they're not called or anointed to be in such a position, but that's what happens when you have the system that works in your favor. You get things you don't deserve, right? So you don't really know how to be a good, and this is not just a one-off thing. I mean, out of probably all of the 20, at this point, I probably worked over 40 jobs. At this point, we're good. We're definitely at like 34. And it's sad, you know, it's sad because a good majority of them I actually had to leave due to, you know, racism. You know, I've had jobs where white people have run me off. I've had times where they, you know, made it so bad for me that it was just like I couldn't take it no more. I've had times where they cut hours on the schedule, just stop scheduling you randomly. You know what I mean? Just constant racism and you being victimized because you can't do anything about it. You know what I mean? You call HR, they say, well, she, you know, they stick together, they know each other. Her friend was in HR, the cousin was the one who hired her. I mean, it's this whole thing. So I think when we take into account just systemically, I just think that interracial dating, it seems very hard. It does. It really does. And, you know, for me, like I said, I think love is love. So God is real. You know, I'm not here to say it's not possible. And I'm not here to say you shouldn't do, like, I don't really care. That goes back to my my whole thing. But the cultural appropriation, it says a lot because you get with these white women who want to be black. Why not just get with a black woman? I don't understand. So I know this was touchy. I don't want to veer too much into my worldly opinion about this one. But black people, come to Christ. Come to Christ, because you got to renew your mind about who you are. Otherwise, we're never going to be well. We'll always be warring with one another. We'll always be feuding. That's what the devil likes. He likes division. Okay. We'll always be feuding with one another. We'll always be in a space of personal discontentment, not because we're not capable, but because we live in a country that does not favor us, but God does. So get in the will of Christ. You know, get in the will of Christ and give your life to Christ and have fulfillment, have fulfillment and have trust that God will make a way. When you get in purpose, God will make a way. You may not see how it's all going to come together. You may not see, you know what I mean? God can give you ideas. God can put you in places where the door will open, and I just got to encourage my people, because I think, especially right now, more than ever, it's tough. It's really tough. I think when you sit on TikTok and you see the favor systemically of people who are not Black, and you see the way they live in life, and you see how you live in life, and you like, I think it can very much easily ruffle some feathers within yourself, or make you feel insecure, or make you feel like I'm doing something wrong. I need to be doing something more, and I think that easily turns to self-hate, and I think especially as a man, as, from a constitutional and again, systemic standpoint, Black men have not been able to provide for their families. No, they have not. They've been robbed of that opportunity. A majority of them have. Yes, they have. Whether it was the prison to pipeline, or, again, being declined because his name was DeAndre on the application. You know what I mean? Let's just talk about it, and white people are a lot of times in compliance to this, and they go to church, so it's a problem. It's a problem. And I think that, I don't know. I'm just here to talk about it. So hope you guys enjoyed this podcast episode. The book that I referenced was Why Are All the Black Kids Sitting Together in the Cafeteria and Other Conversations About Race by Beverly Tatum. I do take this book here in small doses. I am currently on page 49. I've had it for some time, but I try to, when I learn about African American history, I take it in small doses because it's so heavy. It's a very heavy topic, and I am working to just, again, concentrate my mind in Christ and, forgive always, like, you know what I mean? And just know that, like, God is the ruler of all. For me in this particular situation, I didn't really, initially I was challenged, but I didn't really resort to racism in this, not this one. I'll share more about this story later. But when I first noticed it, I didn't initially resort to racism. And I was very grateful for that, because I prayed for God to renew my mind. But ultimately, that's what it was. But I knew that from the beginning, it wasn't really about racism. It was about the white woman who was insecure about herself. I intimidated her by just being me, and I was thinking to myself about how, I'm rambling at this point, but there was a young woman in my class, and she just went on and on about how her parents are building her credit and all these different things. And I said to myself, like, why is that a flex? Why is that a flex? That's a really odd flex, and it's a blessing, but it's an odd flex. Like, who are you trying to, And I thought about the advancements and the passes that the trainer gave this girl because she was young and she was white. And so it makes a difference. But I was going to say that this is kind of where that excellence and why Black people are oftentimes not mediocre. God uses it to our good, but it's really because we don't really get a right to be. We don't have certain advantages. We have to really, really work hard. And I think that's why our struggles are oftentimes, seen as like this glorious story, but it's really sad because it shouldn't have to be that way. We use it for our good, but we have to talk about like that whole cycle, because it's really traumatic and it's very tough. And I think it definitely speaks to our endurance. I definitely think it speaks to our strength, and I think it speaks to our pride and just all those things. So I don't want to veer. I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast episode. I hope that you took something from it. Hope you found insight here. And I love everyone. I do. I really do. I just wanted to share this experience because it's important for us to know that we're seen. I know for me, there were many times in my life where I didn't have the verbiage to stick up for myself. I didn't even have an understanding of what was going on. Just a lot of rage. I was feeling a lot of frustration, a lot of, just unsettling, emotions within myself, but I didn't always have the words to express what I was feeling. There weren't always words for why they're taking me off the schedule this week, or, why my manager is nitpicking with me, or why I am at work and I just feel like I'm under a microscope. You know what I mean? And I'm doing nothing but simply being here and merely being, so it's interesting, but I'll share more about the story later on. God bless.